John Knox also claimed that budget cuts forced the department to temporarily suspend the testing of hydrants, which only adds to the many questions that people have about fire hydrants recently lacking water and a $117 million reservoir being empty. So clearly there's a lot to unpack here, and that's why I want to bring in Rick Crawford, the former Los Angeles Fire Department Chief Battalion Officer. Thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for your great service. You think the fire chief should step down?
Well, when you look at the incidents that led up to this fire, including actually, I'll say the day before and the day of, I call it 3 R's of crisis management. And it starts with relationships. And you start building a coalition of people that will help support you. And if you will have a catastrophe, under your watch when you're the fire chief. It's inevitable. We're in that business. And so you have to have a coalition of people around you. That starts with area fire departments. That starts with utility companies, your transportation, your parks and rec. And so you build a coalition, and everyone is going to perform a different function, when the incident occurs. That leads to the next R is recognition, early recognition of a problem. When you look at the situation here that happened with the National Weather Service having a particularly dangerous situation, something really no one's in our careers ever seen before. I spent 33 years there and have never had any type of wind of it in Southern California. And I'll say that, Southern California. That's a trigger point for you to now have an offensive-minded, all hands on deck, deployment model. And so if you take even all of the events that led up to this, and one thing that was missed here was there's the shift change that happened at 6:30 in the morning. They let that shift go home. And instead of having a limited recall, you hold everybody on duty. You staff every available fire resource you can. You're offensive minded. You have a strategy of another army of resources, which was 42 engines. You would have had the chance to be able to make an impact. Whether you prevent it or not is,
that's the question, right? How much could you have actually prevented the situation that was created by the fire chief and the mayor? Could this disaster have been different? And that's the question. But I go back to the problems here. So I want to pull up the letter. This is number 1. The letter lays out some things that are apparently very concerning regarding Crowley. It says issues with workers' compensation and members receiving prompt and necessary medical care, multiple significant lawsuits filed by females, minorities, and command officers related to retaliation, harassment, and hostile work environment issues, lack of necessary medical supplies for EMS incidents. This is a more systematic problem, no?
Well, in my time there as a captain and officer and now in chief officer, I experienced some of that frustration. And parts of my duties and responsibilities was to ensure adequate supplies for my people. Also ensure that when I had people that were off injured, that I would check on them and making sure they were getting their doctor's appointments. And some of the agencies we hired, and some of the, supply chain issues that we had, they were difficult. And so at best, and so when you have a frustrated workforce, productivity tends to be a problem. And so this was a very common or chronic occurrence, during years under a tenure.
One more thing I want to play for you. So there was this longtime Pacific Palisades resident, Mr. Valentine, who about 45 minutes after his wife called in the fire, they finally see this helicopter. But the fire is already large. He gave a NewsNation exclusive interview. Take a listen to this, and we'll talk about it on the other side.
I did not see any firefighters up there.
Why do you think that is?
That's the question. I don't know. I wish I knew the answer to that. I have no idea. I have no idea why that is. It could have been confined. It wouldn't have touched any of the homes. I don't believe that for 1 second. You're talking to somebody that's been up in this community for 40 years, and I've seen fires. And I've seen fires during those 40 years, and there's always been a good response. I don't know what happened this time.
Rick, real quick, we're running out of time. Why did it happen? Was the LAFD not prepared?
Well, I'll say missed point. Not having the proper staffing that day, not recalling that entire shift, putting those 42 engines on the street, and being able to pre-deploy, an additional army of firefighters. You had it before the fire started, and that would have made an impact, in my opinion. Not stop the fire, but definitely probably lessen the crisis that we have.
It's fair questions we got to ask. Rick Crawford, thank you so much. And again, thank you for your service.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your screen. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.